Hey everyone, and welcome to Death By, where contestants will earn reps for their arguments for a chance to stand on top of the podium pedestal. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Whoever I decide has the best argument through the final round will earn 30 seconds to talk about a topic of their choosing. You spoke, we listened, there are no longer eliminations. On today's episode, we have two-time Affiliate Cup champion and seminar staff head trainer, James Hobart, CrossFit Games reporter, Nikki Brazier with Kettlebells and Cocktails, affiliate owner and CrossFit analyst, Chase Ingram with Get With The Programming, and Games athlete, Tim Polson with Team CrossFit East Nashville Proven. Let's play Death By. Topic 1. Just last week, CrossFit sent out an email to athletes with a new equipment update. It stated, quote, gymnastic grips that are secured at the wrist, touching the palm of the hand and pulled towards the middle finger may not extend past the tip of the middle finger. CrossFit states that this purpose is to allow grips that protect the hands, but do not significantly reduce grip fatigue. However, a little demo that Dallin Pepper recently put on social media using his grips shows that this new rule could lead to some confusion on the competition floor. So what are our initial thoughts on this new rule? Chase, we will let you begin. 1 minute on the clock.
All right, 1 minute on the clock. The first things first, it was a disaster of an announcement, an explanation of what the new rule is. You show one picture of the palm open and then the next picture of the palm over. It was just an absolutely ridiculous way to display what's right and what's wrong. And Dave Castro even talked about this on his Week in Reviews. They screwed that up and they took ownership of it. What this really means for the future is, listen, the grip length was getting absurd. I mean, you're seeing grips that are going to like mid-forearm or past the wrist when it's wrapped over the bar. And I think what they're looking at is just making sure that there's a different standard of grips. Because when grips first came into play, they were tape grips that you made on your own to protect your hands from ripping, and then soft ones from ripping. Now we've got grips that are making it easier and easier to hold on to the bar. So changing this rule is one thing. I'm okay with standardizing the length. The way they did it was a bit of a mess up.
All right, Tim, what do you have in your gym bag? Do you have any of these really long forearm grips that Chase is talking about?
I definitely do not. I completely agree with Chase about kind of the rollout was definitely, and first off, credit to Dallin Pepper. That was a fantastic use of that scene and meme. But I think, yeah, it's a good idea because, from the point of protecting our hands, gymnastics grips are not meant to confer a specific advantage. It's meant to protect your hands and allow us to compete over the course of a long weekend where we're doing a lot of hanging volume. Like we're doing a lot of hanging from pull-up bars, and without grips, some of us probably wouldn't make it. Many people. I think the cut length is a good idea, though. One, from an advantage standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint. Like if you'll talk to someone like Vic, who owns Victory Grips, grip lock is a real thing and can be a problem when your grips are too long. They can actually get caught all the way around the bar and potentially break the wrist or cause like serious injury. And I think that's something that we would never want to see at the games. And again, it's an unnecessary thing anyway. A normal length grip is more than enough to protect your hand and give you a little bit of a boost on the pull-up bar.
Nikki, what are your thoughts on the grip's new length?
I had to get mine to figure out if I was even following the rules, right? So I'm like, all right, it's under, but then it's over when my hand is over. And it's just bizarre. To be honest, I don't have big feelings about this rule other than Chase is right. Like some of the grips were getting absolutely ridiculous in their length. What I'm really most concerned about is how is this rule going to be enforced? Like that is my question. If you're going to make this rule, then is everyone as they walk out onto the competition floor, is there going to be this sort of like lineup of people and their grips? Everyone's holding their hands out. The grips are all being pressed against their palms so we can ensure that the standard is the same. Like how are we going to ensure and enforce the fact that this is now in the rule book? And truly at the end of the day, what is the standard for the people, or what is the punishment rather for the people whose grips are too long? Do they just get taken away? Are those people now forced to not use grips at all? Because even if they had an advantage with the grip part of the workout, to Tim's point, we could be potentially putting them in danger from ruining their hands for the rest of the event. So I just want more parameters.
James, we'll turn to you. Do you use grips?
I don't really anymore, and I've used grips less and less since I've gotten further away from competing. But it was different when I was competing. I think you use them a lot. To Tim's point, I think it is really important for athletes with whatever piece of equipment to be able to protect themselves from something that's going to happen in the course of competition. So there, I think they're essential. But recently, I reached out to Dave and I said, "Hey, I want to be the head of the grip length task force. So I'm going to be walking around at the games with scissors, cutting people's grips in half just to make sure they abide by this rule." I have a couple of questions here. Would the games be less exciting if we didn't have grips or belts? I don't know. But I do, like I said, want athletes to be able to protect themselves. And I think how we roll these things out in terms of giving the rules to the athletes so it's clear so they don't get punished because we didn't roll the rule out correctly. I think that's the most important thing, same as Nikki said. So don't really have a dog in the fight here. I don't know. I'd wear my grip at my forearm and have it be X long and then slide it up when I go out into the field.
I mean,
There you go.
I got to ask, Tim, I'm going to turn back to you. You said that athletes know that grips are to protect your hands. I appreciate that I am not by any means a professional athlete, but I use my grips to lock in and let all my weight hang on my wrist. You're telling me that there's no athletes that use it for that competitive advantage?
Oh, for sure. But I think there's a difference between getting that little bit of grip lock on an appropriate length grip and being able to basically tie yourself onto a pull-up bar. I think, and that's very different. Like no one's gonna come out and say that if I do a max set of pull-ups with and without grips, my set without would be bigger. Absolutely not. The grips definitely allow me to do more pull-ups in a single set. But I think it also there's a whole lot of factors that kind of go into it as well. Like when your hands start sweating, the grips can be beneficial because your hands don't hold chalk anymore. So there's a lot of things that are kind of a protective piece of it. In addition to, yes, they absolutely provide an advantage over not wearing grips. And, I think everyone knows that. But I think, like I said, there are definitely some kind of safety things as well that go into it, just as far as protecting your hands for a long weekend, sweat, all those things. So there's a lot kind of packed in there.
I'm curious what Nikki brought up, what the punishment is going to be. And it might just, in fact, be James going around and cutting people's grips and just deal with it.
I just feel
Hobart
like there's
scissor
been
hands.
there's just been a lot of drama lately with not knowing what the punishment is for certain things that have come up. Like we saw at semis, there was all the drama around okay, do I hop up onto the rings? Do I do this event? Do I get pulled afterwards? Do I not? Do I get to keep going? It's more clarity I think is going to be really necessary for the athletes to feel comfortable entering into the games, knowing exactly what they can and can't do.
And I think kind of similarly to that, I'm glad that they put in the rule. Granted, again, it wasn't necessarily enforced or rolled out properly, but the no grips on the deadlifts during, I guess it was quarterfinals when they brought that out.
Mm-hmm.
Grips were not meant to be worn to cycle a barbell. That's what your hook grip is for. That's so I think there are instances where we're getting really out of the realm of what they were intended to do. They're intended to, yes, confer a slight advantage on the pull-up bar and protect your hands when doing gymnastic-y pulling things, with lots of torque on your hands. When you're cycling a barbell, you should not have grips on your hands.
You know how hard this is going to be to enforce.
Right.
You don't think it's going to be hard to enforce?
No, put on your grips, open your palms. You can't use those. Done. What are we worried about the punishment is going to be? The punishment is you can't wear these onto the floor now. Good luck with the rest of your event that you're about to undertake.
If that's all that it is, then I think that's great. And I think that that's perfect. I think the question recently has been, what is exactly going to happen with this? And when does that happen? Does every athlete start on the starting mat going like this with their grips? And then everyone's checked and then we start? Or is it, does anybody start and we find out afterwards and then there's drama? That's my question.
Yeah. I think what Chase is saying is in the corrals, they are meticulous about checking equipment, your uniform. All the time before literally every event at the games, inevitably somebody gets sent back to their gym bag because they're wearing the wrong socks. It happens, or they're wearing underwear with a logo that come past their shorts. They are very meticulous about making sure that you're wearing the right uniform and the right gear before you go out there. So I don't think it'll be too much of an enforcement problem on the whole, but I mean, I guess with grips, yeah, you could technically have grips on your hands and then change them in your bag when you get over there. I don't know, whatever. But I don't think it'll be too much of a problem as far as how strict they are in corrals with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that is a good like explanation of how and when it could be checked. Doesn't need to be too complicated.
Exactly.
Time will tell in about 2.5 weeks, and we will
Dang.
see from the sidelines. Tim may be on the floor.
Yeah.
At the close of round 1, we have Chase and Tim tied in the lead with 3 points. Nikki and James right behind them with 2 as we enter topic number 2. Also included in the email to athletes, cuts at the games. According to the email, after the end of competition on Friday, the top 30 teams and the top 30 men and women will advance. Then, at the close of competition on Saturday, the top 20 teams and top 20 men and women will advance. We've obviously seen cuts before. This isn't new, but do we love it or do we hate it? James, I'll let you start this one.
Oh boy. I don't mind cuts, but a couple of things I think about with cuts is one, I do think they're more complicated than just like a couple of the games designers just trying to punish athletes. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think having cuts allows the games team to do things like make more complicated events, have more events, make the events more elaborate for the athletes. I also think from a viewing experience, it's a lot nicer to only watch the best of the best heats. We've already had semifinals. We've already had a qualifier. Let's just take less people to the games overall. Then we don't have to have this cuts argument. The other thing is that I think the majority of games we've seen have already had cuts. This happened time and time and time again. And every time they show up, it's like the first time we've seen them. Now, last thing, arguing against myself, is I think that in CrossFit methodology, you want to see the test in totality, right, in order to judge somebody's fitness. And I do think having cuts prevents us from seeing the entire picture of fitness for all the athletes.
We might need to change it to a test and back to events, but that's a different discussion. Nikki, I'll let you take this one next. Love it or hate it?
I love it. I probably will get a lot of hate for that, but I like the drama. I like the storyline. I like the level of anxiety that it gives me as a viewer, that it gives the athletes out on the field to play. Tim probably is going to hate that, being an athlete out on the field to play. You guys have enough anxiety to deal with already, but I do think that from a viewer standpoint, it does lend an element of drama, and it does really force the cream to rise to the top. What I do think we need is a really solid, well-rounded test ahead of cuts. And that's been the argument in past years, right? Is we get some sort of like monostructural event or some sort of weightlifting event or something that is sort of, I don't know, just like a more singular test that happens after cuts that we maybe should have seen beforehand, so that we're doing every single type of well-rounded test before we get to a point where we're really losing people off on the back end. And then from there, I do think it keeps it more interesting, because once you get to the very end, it's like those early heats are people who you know aren't going to qualify, who aren't fighting for the podium, and there's less of a storyline there. So I like them. I like everything about them.
All right, Tim, are you going to counter this one with Nikki?
I'm going to need 2 minutes on the clock, please. No, so I think there are some valid arguments for cuts at the games. Hands down, no question. James and Nikki both brought up some points for them. But I think the games is, when it's programmed as a test, it's the whole weekend is what claims the fittest on earth. And you earn your ranking based off of how you perform the entire test. So unless you're programming the CrossFit Games as one test Thursday, Friday, another test is Saturday, and then another test is Sunday, you're not taking all of the tests. So I think you're not getting the well-rounded picture. And you can make the argument you're not affecting the podium, you are, you aren't, but you don't know that. Like, you don't know what the events are. You don't know what athletes are capable of. And in order to fully earn your place on the leaderboard, you need to compete against every athlete in every test. So all 40 athletes need to compete against each other in all 15 tests to say that I am the 12th fittest man on earth, the 3rd fittest man on earth, whatever it is.
Chase, are you with Nikki and James, or are you with Tim?
From a fan perspective of, like Tim said, seeing the fittest field at the end of the weekend, I think is pretty cool to see. But at the end of the day, we're not finding the fittest field. We're finding the fittest on earth. And that's one man, one woman, and one team. The cuts don't really affect the top 20 as much as people think. Ran the numbers for last year. The top 20 men and women change by one person. The top 10 men don't change. The top 10 women don't change in order from 1 to 10. So that doesn't really have a great effect on it. The thing that I am most worried about when it comes to making the cuts is, do we have the right programming to have an appropriate cut at the time? 2019, absolute disaster. So when you cut to 30, you need to be able to ensure that the programming matches up, that everyone was tested appropriately with the number of sample size of events they have to make the cut to 30. The same thing for 20. It's the programming that is the most important part when it comes down to cuts. Love it or hate it, it's the programming that decides whether it's a good or bad idea.
Ooh, I like that thought process. Very good arguments on both sides here. We're going to see what people say in the comments to this, because I'm sure it's going to get a little intense. At the end of round 2, we always need the popcorn. We still have Chase and Tim leading the way, tied for 6. Nikki and James right behind them with 4 points each. This last one, topic number 3, this is for all the points to see who will win. And I know that nobody here wants to answer this question, but with those cuts, I'm going to ask you, who is your most controversial athlete that you think will not make it into the top 20? Right now, we're going to see if we can take volunteers. Does anybody want to go first?
I'll go first. I'm not a coward.
Oh,
Okay,
thank you, Dave.
Let's hear it.
All right.
Lead the way.
I am a notorious rookie hater. So I'll just throw that out there. And I'll start with the men's side. And this is somebody that everybody is high on. I am too. I love their performance and what they did. But the fanfare and what's he going to do at the CrossFit Games, I thought has been really interesting for an unproven rookie. Now, he proved himself in semifinals, and I think he won 2 or 3 events at a semifinal. But I'm going to say it. Yella Hosta will not make the top 20 at the CrossFit Games on the men's side. On the women's side, a little less controversial, a fan favorite. She's back. She had a great semifinals, but she has yet to have a full, secure, healthy season. And when you think about backs and that security and safety at the CrossFit Games and the longevity it takes to compete all the way through, Bethany Shadburn, I don't believe will make it through the weekend into the top 20.
Tim, we're going to let you follow it up. As an athlete, which athlete do you think won't make it?
So yes, let me start by saying I don't want to answer this question. But I think kind of going back to the last question that we said, it really kind of depends on what the programming looks like. You know, if it's programming like 2017, 2018, where you have a lot of these kind of single modality tests before you have a potential cut situation, so things like a marathon row or a swim event, that could dramatically affect who makes the weekend, depending on kind of where you place these events, which goes back to our last topic of like how important the programming is. But I think if I'm going to pick a controversial person, and I do think they'll make the end of the weekend, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to say Cole Sager, only because he's someone who excels at the kind of out of the box events, and he tends to finish strong. You look at his semifinals performances, some years at the games, he kind of always comes in big on the weekend, and you need to have a really good Thursday, Friday in order to do that. But Cole, I love you, and I do think you'll make it.
Yeah. Whoa.
It's not fair. It's cheating.
Tim earns no points.
They gotta have mercy
no
on your
points
soul.
because he copped out.
That's very sad.
Your ass hurt from sitting on that fence, Tim. Get in there, man.
It's so hard, man.
It's not personal. It's not personal.
I know.
It's
But there's no one I can
not personal.
There's no one I can look at. I mean, like, so honestly, like looking through the athletes, like of the people I would expect to make the cut, it's really hard to look at someone and be like, no. Like Chase's argument, Yella Hosta, you know, people are really high on him, and I think for good reasons, but rookies are still completely unknowns. So it's tough to like, you can still bet against a rookie and kind of feel good about it. Whereas like picking someone who you know or think is going to be in the top 20 and bumping them down, like it's hard, man. Like it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm not shitting on Chase either, by the way.
You can shit on me. Like,
Oh, Tim.
I like that, James.
Okay. All right, James, you're up. You're up.
I should have went first. It's because funny, Chase mentioned the female that I was going to mention. Tim mentioned the male. I'm going to be a fence sitter too and say no one controversial is going to miss that 20-person cut. I think they will all make it. I think the 30-person, 20-person cuts are really reasonable. I love the point that, hey, rookies aren't that controversial. I mean, they get a lot of fanfare and hype, but we don't expect them to have like these breakout performances at the games. I do think if there are people who are going to be close to it, though, I think it's going to be one of those guys who have been featured in this 10 years in a row qualifying, this decade of fitness qualifying the games. And I think it's like a Noah, a Cole, a BKG, though I've heard his attitude toward events with cuts, and he seems to attack them like every workout is his last. But I just think those guys have a lot going on. It already seems like their view is on things past the games, and that might take their view off the weekend, even though they're vets. So if I had to say controversial, it's one of those three.
Ooh, that was good.
James kind
That's so
of
hard to
answered the
say.
question at the end, so we gave him a point for that.
I like all those guys.
You get some mercy point.
We didn't say we hated them. We just said I don't think we can make the top
This
20.
is sport.
I heard
This is
him say
supposed
he
to be
hated
fun
him. That's what I heard.
conversation. No hard feelings
James
at the end of
hates
this.
these guys.
Okay, Nikki, are you going to bring it home for us?
No, I don't want to. Okay, fine. I do hate this question because it shouldn't be personal, but of course, we're all in this community together, and so of course it feels personal, and I'm sure it'll feel personal in the comment section later. But my pick for a controversial person to not make it into the final cuts is Sam Quant. And the reason that I say that is because I feel like he's just been sort of like fighting back to prove himself ever since he stood on the podium in 2020. And even that was a very strange year. So you can maybe put an asterisk next to the 2020 games for all sorts of different reasons. After missing 2021, and I know coming back and explaining all the things that he was dealing with his health and growing his family and everything about that, I just still feel like he's on this sort of like road to redemption to really prove that he deserves to be there, deserves to be on top of the podium. And, he came in fourth at semis, so maybe he's on his way there, but I won't really believe it until I see it back on the game stage.
Ooh.
Guys, thank you so much for answering the question. Everybody in the comment section, leave them alone. This is sport. We're talking about performance. That's
at
it.
Chase_Ingram. You can comment to me all you want. I'm not afraid of you. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Just make sure you follow me when you get there.
Please send my hateful comments to Chase_Ingram as well. That would be awesome. Yeah. Just throw them right up. Great.
Here's our quick follow-up. Well, let's end on a positive note. Who's your one athlete controversial pick to make the cuts?
Oh, there we go. Tim, you can start.
My controversial one would be Sydney Wells.
Ah.
Interesting. Interesting.
I like that.
I mean, obviously, I've been kind of like backdoor able to watch her train, like being down in Nashville, watching her train out of Proven. She's got some really, some of her games level skills are actually very impressive. I've watched her do some workouts. I'm not gonna spill the beans on anything, but some things that, like I said, were just like games level of events that you're like, wow, that was like really phenomenally impressive, and I would think competitive. So yeah, I think she's someone who could kind of surprise people and potentially, have some really good showings in a couple of events and make the last 20.
Chase, who do you have?
I'm going to pick one of mine that I said earlier so I can have a back door like everybody else took. I'm just kidding. I'm going to stick with that.
Yellow Hosta.
Yellow Hosta. No, I'm going to go on the female side, and we've had a lot of young teen rookie success. And the curious question coming out of semifinals was, can Olivia Kersetter qualify for the CrossFit Games? Now, not only can she qualify, but can she make the top 20? And I think she has the potential to do that. Again, depending on how the programming lines up for her, but I would like to see if she has the ability to not only make the CrossFit Games, which she has shown, but to make the top 20 as well.
That was actually my second pick.
James.
agree.
Ooh.
I got to start going first because I think Olivia Kerstetter is a great one. I think you're seeing this constant rise of these teen athletes. But I'm going to go for Fee Sagafi and just say I think she's carrying the momentum.
Good pick. Good
Look
pick.
at
That
that.
was my
Coming out of
pick, not
semifinals. So,
fair.
yeah, especially if they don't have a lot of single modality stuff early on.
Okay, Nikki, do you have a backup pick?
No, Fee was gonna be my pick because I just feel like she moved across the country, she changed training camps, like she's been attacking her weaknesses over the last couple of seasons, and she hasn't been at the games since 2019. And we all know that that was like the weirdest, wackiest year of qualifications, and the people were all over the world. And then she got cut there, so I think she's got a super fire in her belly. I just like she's one who I feel like we've seen a lot of growth from over the last few years. And I want to see, like, I'm encouraged to see that growth really show itself at the games on that floor.
Some good athletes. We are just about 3 weeks away from seeing who will make it to the top 20 and then be crowned the fittest men, women, and team. But until then, Chase Ingram, you advanced the podium pedestal, winning by just 1 point today.
Broadening the media coverage to a worldwide audience outside of the official coverage from the media department at the CrossFit Games is that bringing back a world feed that you can license out to any media outlet in the world in their own language, in their own time zones, whenever they want. And so I think bringing back the world feed of 2019 that you can license out to different podcasts in the space, different broadcasts in the space, in their own languages, in their own format of which they want to cover it. I would love to see that being able to be licensed out to other entities that want to use them for the YouTube channels, for their podcast platforms, anything to spread the word and the coverage of the CrossFit Games worldwide, inching closer and closer and closer to 30 million people by 2030.
Ending on a positive note. We love that. Spread the good word of CrossFit. Thank you, Chase. And congratulations to Chase. Thank you, James, Nikki, Tim, everybody for playing. We hope you guys like the new format. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, let us know, give us your feedback. And in the meantime, check out our other interviews on YouTube. They spoke about Fee. We're actually interviewing her tomorrow, so make sure you check out that YouTube segment as well. Until then, from all of us at Talking Elite Fitness, I'm Lauren Kalil, and we'll see you next time.